Hello. So I actually filmed this video in its entirety last week, but I hated it, so we're filming it all again because my perfectionist ass won't let me it won't let me be mediocre, except for when I wrote my college thesis apparently. And unfortunately this time we will not have the colored contacts or the fangs because one dried out and the other got lost. I'll let you figure out which is which. So we're doing this with no theatrics, except for got a teddy bear there. Does that count? I'm not funny. Let's get started. Okay, so for clarification, I'm going to be talking about the first movie. I have read the book, I liked it. I do have the entire Twilight White series and Midnight Sun, which I keep next to Pulitzer Prize winning Goldfinch, which I have not read. I'm trash, but you know what? I don't care. But the reason I'm not going to be talking about the books is because I don't really consider myself too much of an expert in what makes prose good. I'm much more confident in my film criticism abilities. My voice just cracked. So that's why. I'm not going to be talking about the other movies in the saga because I do have a soft spot for all of Twilight, but I do think that the only unironically good one is the first one. And just to keep it, short. And then third, I'm not going to be talking about the culture around Twilight, like the society that hates teenage girls or writes off YA as an invalid art form. They're very valid topics to discuss, but it's not really what I'm trying to do. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, now that we got all that out of the way, let's get started. I'm just gonna punctuate everything with a drink of this cider. Twilight, directed by Catherine Hardwicke, starring Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson, was released in 2008 to mostly mixed reviews. While many critics praised the romance elements and the mood, many also criticized the acting and dialogue and considered it inferior to its source material. The discourse that started around Twilight is nothing to scoff at either, considering the huge amounts of both praise and backlash the film received upon release. Still a better love story than Twilight is a meme that is still used to this day. So, I am not here to argue that Twilight is fantastic, that we'll look back on it in 20 years and consider it a masterpiece. It's not that. It's not. But all I'm trying to argue is that Twilight is good. It has artistic merit. And not just from a subjective stance, but from a raw filmmaking stance as well. So that leads us into Part 1, Narration. Yeah, this is going to be a numbered list because, what would a video essay be without blatant identity theft? So, Twilight has narration, and I'm going to be honest, that is kind of a qualm for me. Yeah, just a little bit.
I'd never given much thought to how I would die.
Can't relate, boo. I don't generally like narration unless something unique is done with it. This is even a problem I have with things like Euphoria or Arrested Development. But here's the thing. If I can enjoy things like Euphoria and Arrested Development despite the narration, I think I'm allowed to enjoy Twilight. Because here's the thing. Narration is used in so many things, but particularly in YA, like The Hate U Give, Divergent. Excuse me. And I like The Hate U Give, which is YA. So I can't really condemn Twilight for narration. Because so many things use narration. Do I like it? No, but... So let's talk about a little concept called show versus tell. So if you've ever taken an English class, you probably know what this is, so you don't need it explained, but I'm still going to because I'm obnoxious. But all it means is that information presented visually is more impactful, it's more powerful than information presented orally. And let's be clear, that is generally a very good mantra. However, this is not a hard and fast rule, because screenplays, they're meant to be brief, they're meant to be streamlined, and sometimes showing can be more lengthy than telling. Here's the thing about Twilight. It is 2 hours long, which by today's standards isn't that long, but in 2008, a movie marketed mostly towards teenage girls, that is kind of long. Of course, now, Marvel can release a 3-hour long movie where a bunch of white people and Chadwick Boseman, RIP, just do nothing for 3 hours and make it the highest grossing movie of all time. I saw it twice, and I'm not proud. The narration in Twilight probably kept it from being longer than it needed to be. It may not have. The pacing may have been fine, presenting things visually. But to me, this movie is long, and it does drag a little bit, so maybe the narration was a way to, do that more efficiently, because you know what? It does set up the setting, the mood, Bella's character, and foreshadows the ending within a few minutes. It does it really efficiently, which is the whole point of a screenplay. It's not my favorite aspect of Twilight. It's really not. But I don't think it is that big of a deal in this case. That's all I have to say on that, so let's get into Part 2, Characterization. Bella Swan is a good character. That's it. There was this narrative that came out when the movie was released and when the book was released that Bella was an underwritten and anti-feminist character, which I'll get into why I think she is a feminist character in a bit, but I think it's just funny because a lot of the people who had these critiques that thought she was anti-feminist, I know never identified as feminists themselves, so do with that what you will. Let's talk about why Bella is a good character. Let's get into a little concept called agency and active characters. These are both very simple concepts. Agency simply means that a character has choice. An active character is a character whose choices affect the plot significantly. On the flip side, a passive character is a character who the plot happens to. It is, in essence, the difference between a top and a bottom. And here's the thing. You're looking at a bottom right now, so do with that what you will. Here's the thing about Bella. She makes a lot of choices. They might not be good choices, but... So Bella, at the beginning of the movie, she chooses to move to Forks, a place she makes explicit that she does not like, in order to give her mom and her new husband some time to themselves because she can tell it's what they need. This displays her selflessness right off the bat and makes sure the plot happens. Later, when she finds out that Edward is a vampire, she chooses to continue pursuing him despite the danger he presents. Sorry, there's a fire, I guess. They must have heard my mixtape. I'm not funny. Why do I keep doing this? This displays her stubbornness and keeps the plot moving forward. At the end, she chooses to leave the safety of the Cullens in order to save her mother. This displays her bravery, reinforces her selflessness, and instigates the climax. She chooses to hurt her father in order to save him, to do the research to find out that Edward is a vampire, to eventually marry Edward, and to become a vampire. She's making all these choices. She probably should have gone to therapy, but who can afford therapy nowadays? Bella is constantly making choices, but because a lot of these choices do center around her vampire boyfriend, a lot of people thought she was a bad character. This is a romance. This is a supernatural romance. It is not horror or action or comedy, though we'll talk about that. It is a romance. So yeah, the central conflict revolves around the relationship. Let me jump ship to New Moon for just a bit. So, a lot of attention in that book and movie is paid to the fact that Bella becomes depressed, irrational, catatonic after Edward leaves her, but also Edward tries to commit suicide when he thinks that Bella has died. This is not a story about a woman falling head over heels for an uncaring man. This is two idiots who are so hopelessly in love with each other that they can't imagine life without the other one. And that type of plotline is not above criticism by any stretch, but to say that Twilight is unhealthy, anti-feminist, unrealistic because of those reasons is to say that, say, Romeo and Juliet is the same, because that has very similar plot points to Twilight. This is a romance. The arc centers around the relationship. That is standard. And yeah, it's melodramatic. It's really melodramatic, but it's no more melodramatic than Titanic or every French language period drama ever, especially the lesbian ones. Another criticism when Twilight was released was that Bella had no personality. She had no character, and I wholeheartedly disagree. Bella is a supremely shy, awkward teen who doesn't have a high opinion of herself. And yeah, that's cliche. But I have not really seen a character like Bella in other media before or since that movie was released. Sure, there are shy antisocial characters in many, many movies, books, etc. But that usually comes with this like stoicism that garners respect from people, like Katniss in the Hunger Games, Triss and Divergent. Triss and Katniss are both very antisocial people, but they don't have that same specific awkwardness that Bella has. I'll get into Kristen Stewart's performance more later, but the way she plays Bella is really unique in that she does not attempt to make her overly charismatic or badass. Jeez, I really shouldn't be drinking while I'm making this video, but I'm not comfortable with anything. Back to it. It might sound like a diss that I call her that, but I don't necessarily think that a protagonist needs to be either in order to be a good protagonist. What makes a good protagonist is complexity. And Bella is complex. She is full of contradictions. She is meek, but a lot braver than people give her credit for. She's judgmental, but also incredibly selfless. She has a dry sense of humor, probably because she grew up in the desert. Worst joke I've ever made. Video over. Her arc from repressed, insecure girl to confident, mature woman is more prolonged over the entire series, but Twilight in and of itself has an arc with her realizing her self-worth, realizing that she deserves to be loved. Is it the strongest arc? No. But to say that she has no personality or no character is kind of flawed media comprehension, for being honest. Part 2b, Feminism. Okay, it's time to move on to feminism, a topic I'm an expert on because I am a man. But in all seriousness, I do consider myself a feminist. Like, I try to verse myself in feminist ideals. Now that I say that out loud, I do kind of sound like a pick-me, but like a male version. What do you call that? Let me know in the comments. Before I get into it, I just want to say that I do not want anyone to take my feminist reading of Twilight as the only one. No one will. But I am not a woman, though I have been consistently disappointed by men in bed, so we're getting there. But I can't really speak for a woman's experience more than a straight woman can speak for my experience, though plenty try. This is just my own interpretation, and I encourage people to dispute me, rebuff me, support me, whatever you want to do. So tell me your points, because again, this is just one idiot's view. Since the second wave of feminism, there has been a push for women to pursue their desires, no matter how crazy they may seem. All for this. Do whatever you want as long as you don't want to be a cop. But there is a select group of feminists that have taken this message and warped it. And I say select group, small but vocal minority. This does not encompass all feminists. They have taken this message and warped it to mean that you have to pursue a career. You have to aspire to more than homemaking, or else you're supporting the patriarchy. And I unabashedly believe that this is anti-feminist, because it leaves behind women who want to be wives and mothers. Stephenie Meyer herself has identified as a feminist and has lambasted critiques of her and her writing that claim she is anti-feminist, citing the fact that Twilight is about a woman's choice. Bella does not become a wife or mother until the last book and movie, but I think it's still relevant. One thing a YouTube comment of all things brought to my attention is the fact that this is a story about a woman who wants something, works for it, and gets it. And nothing in the narrative punishes her for wanting these things. Just because her ambition is to be with Edward, to become a vampire, that doesn't mean she is anti-feminist. As Big Joel pointed out in his video on Twilight, Bella never second guesses her choice to be with Edward. This is made clear in New Moon, the second movie in a 5-movie series.
Don't make me choose, because it'll be him.
There's never a point where she's like, oh, maybe I want to be with Jacob. No, she wants to be with Edward, and so she does what she can to make that happen. In the first movie, there are multiple instances of Bella displaying feminist attitudes or calling out toxic behavior. She tells Angela to ask Eric out when he won't. She calls out men peeping on her friends as disgusting. Bella is a feminist, and it's not like she's subtle about it. So, many critics also pointed out that the books and movies enforce traditional gender roles. Bella and Edward do kind of encapsulate traditional gender roles, if we're being honest. But, and this is just a personal thing, I don't attribute it to everyone. I don't necessarily think that portraying something, even if it's in a positive light, is necessarily enforcing it. Also, Bella and Edward have basically the opposite views of sex as to what society would expect. Another thing pointed out by many critics, not even by the feminist variety, is that the relationship between Edward and Bella is abusive. And here, I do agree that the relationship is not great or healthy, particularly near the beginning of it. But I don't know personally if I would go as far as to call it abusive. So we will discuss all of that right after the commercial break. I'm just kidding, there's no ads. I'm not a real YouTuber. Part 2C. Is Edward abusive? So I did originally write a section here arguing that I thought the relationship between the two was unhealthy but not necessarily abusive, but I realized I don't want to discuss this. I don't want to be leading the discussion on this because it's not that it's not a good topic to discuss, it's just that I'm not educated in this. I've never been in a situation like this. I don't know anyone in a situation like this. So I am not the person to talk about a sensitive topic like this. I have my opinions, but you know what? I'm not going to air them because it would help. Anyway, section is canceled. Let's talk about something that totally won't get my video suppressed. Part 2D, sexuality. Notice how part D is about sexuality? Totally intentional. Bella's sexuality is a prevalent theme in all the movies, and at the risk of being even more controversial, I'd say Twilight handles her sexuality better than a lot of media that I've seen. When a writer is portraying a woman's sexuality, they usually go one of 4 ways. 1, ignore it. 2, emphasize her virginity. 3, emphasize how Mach 3 slutty she is. Or 4, focus on the man's experience. Twilight sidesteps all of this by simply presenting a woman who is a virgin until the last book, the second to last movie, but she still actively wants sex, just with a specific person. While there are ways we can discuss how her virginity is treated, particularly in Breaking Dawn, that's not really what I'm trying to do. That's a lengthy topic and it would make this video too long. It'd be like, I don't know, Viagra for this video, or like one of those ads on a third-party gay porn website that say they can make your penis grow bigger in like a week. Has anybody ever clicked on those? Because I'm curious, like, what exactly this is entailing. Like, is it a pill? But I also don't want to give my computer an STD, so like, when Edward first kisses Bella, she is the one who tries to take it further, and Edward rejects her. However, neither Edward nor the narrative punishes her for wanting sex. There is just a dissonance between Bella, who wants to have sex specifically with Edward, but doesn't really want to get married, and Edward, who wants to wait until he's married to have sex. It makes sense that Edward would want to wait, considering, he's from a time when waiting to have sex until marriage was very common, and he's a gentleman. In Breaking Dawn, when they finally do have sex, Edward is so concerned for her well-being because she has bruises, she has scratches all over her. But it's made explicit that she enjoyed it, like, a lot. Like, I think in the book, she even talks about how, like, ooh, maybe I should, like, stay a human for a little bit longer and do as a human for a little bit longer. She doesn't get that chance. But the point is, how many mainstream books and movies before, like, the 2000s allowed a woman to enjoy sex? It's more commonplace now, I guess, but before Twilight, there wasn't really much. I guess you could argue erotic movies like 9.5 Weeks, but I try to forget that that movie exists because Mickey Rooney scares me, and I suggest you do the same. So this section ended up way longer than I originally intended it to. I have lived long enough to become the villain. It's the only Christopher Nolan, the first of 2 Christopher Nolan references, neither of them positive. It's finally time to move on to Part 3, Acting. A common point of criticism when this movie was released was the performances of Robert Pattinson and, in particular, Kristen Stewart. The hatred for Kristen Stewart went beyond her performance, and many just reviled her as a person, apparently. So you'd think that to warrant this amount of vitriol, her performance would have needed to be terrible, but I do regret to inform the members of the jury that her performance is mostly great, with just a handful of awkward deliveries. As discussed, Bella is a weird character. She doesn't have the charisma of a usual protagonist, nor does she have, like, the means to be, like, kick-ass. She's shy and reserved, and just refer to my section before. Kristen Stewart does not attempt to make Bella stone cold. Bella is shy and reserved, but she also wears her heart on her sleeve. And Kristen Stewart manages to portray these in a really interesting way. Her somewhat stunted delivery and physical tics add a lot to what she's going for in this performance, which is a insecure girl who is finally finding someone with whom she does not have to be the responsible one. We'll talk about that in a bit, don't you worry. I know a lot of people like to make fun of Kristen Stewart for the tics she had, but, like, you still remember them, right? She managed to create an instantly memorable character that people parodied and imitated for years. She played it so well to the point that people just thought she was like that in real life. And, like, to say that this is a bad performance is kind of missing the point as to what a good performance is. A good performance is one where you forget that the actor is there. You forget that there is an actor, only that there is a character. And I think Kristen Stewart does that really, really well. I'd also like to point out that Kristen Stewart was 17 when filming began on this movie. To lead a movie like this, for any actor, but particularly for a child actor, that's a lot of pressure, because a lot of times the success of a film rests on their shoulders. On that note, Kristen Stewart was literally a child when this movie started filming, and people harassed her and bullied her for playing a part. Like, I think at this point, people are more, like, attuned to the fact that, hey, maybe let's not bully actors for, doing their job. But, like, it still happens. Remember Jake Lloyd? Remember Kelly Marie Tran? Both Star Wars. Funny that I don't think any of us want a repeat of any of those. Kristen Stewart is thriving. She's an even better actress than she was in Twilight, so clearly she is doing something right. But don't forget, gays, Twilight is the reason we have Kristen Stewart today. Let's go to Robert Pattinson. So Robert Pattinson had a difficult task with Twilight. He had to portray an older man who was stuck emotionally and physically at 17. Robert Pattinson plays this character with the rigid morals of an old man, but with the intelligence and maturity of a 17-year-old. He is impulsive and emotional, but he's also refined and stoic. In less capable hands, this performance could have come off as disjointed, unbalanced, but Robert Pattinson manages to seamlessly maneuver between the two characters and make it feel natural. When I was reading the book, the way Edward spoke kind of grossed me out because it did sound like an old man talking to this child. Watching the movie, it doesn't feel as gross because even though the dialogue is not changed dramatically, Robert Pattinson delivers it in a way that kind of sounds like a teenager trying to act older than he is, which is, I guess, kind of the opposite of what Edward is actually going for, but I do think the effect is all the same. He comes off as an old soul trapped in a teenager, which he is. That's exactly what he is. It's surprisingly deep, and Edward injects enough bizarre charisma to make him more interesting, charismatic, and funnier than he was in the book, for being honest. I think even people who dislike Twilight consider Billy Burke's performance as Charlie Swan to be a highlight. He is both blissfully unaware and somehow the only rational person. He is unshakingly supportive of Bella and desperate to keep her in his life, even though he doesn't really know how to relate to her. He is an instantly engaging character due to his emotional relatability and the bit of levity he brings to kind of a slow-paced film. Billy Burke just gives off this safe aura that like encapsulates what it means to be a good parent, but it's not one-dimensional because he doesn't really know how to be a good parent. And all I'm trying to say is that Billy Burke, I want you to adopt me. I know I'm 22, but please, I'll pay for the adoption papers. The supporting characters and performances are more of a mixed bag. I would say Bella's friends are, for the most part, sympathetic and convincing in their roles. Anna Kendrick in particular stands out because she manages to portray Jessica as vapid but not necessarily unintelligent or outwardly mean. It honestly reminds me of Emma Watson's performance in The Bling Ring. Nikki Reed delivers a hardened performance with just enough sadness to keep her from being unrelatable, and thus makes one of the most interesting characters that Stephenie Meyer should have dug into more, because we want Rosalie. We want more about Rosalie. Peter Facinelli as Carlisle exudes this classy and calm demeanor that perfectly encapsulates Carlisle's character. Also, he's very hot, so I'm a bit biased. Peter Facinelli, I know you're engaged, but please just give me a... Ashley Greene as Alice, Jackson Rathbone as Jasper, and Taylor Lautner as Jacob. They're fine, they're serviceable, but I think their limited screen time was kind of a good thing, particularly for Taylor Lautner. Kellen Lutz is funny and energetic as Emmett, but a bit clumsy and unfocused as well. I would say that the least interesting performances, the least convincing performances, come from the villains. Eddie Gathegi as Laurent, Cam Gigande as James, and Rochelle Lefebvre as Victoria. They are uniformly bland and unintimidating. Like, Eddie Gathegi probably fares the best, but he also has like 5 lines and is the least important to the plot. I wonder why that is. Cam Gigande is hot. So he never had to learn to be a good actor. So he never became one. I'm sorry, but tell me one good Cam Gigande performance. Like, in this movie, he tries so hard to come off as this threat. But it always comes off as like a 3rd grader playing pretend. Rochelle Lefebvre is also completely unintimidating and boring. And if you think Kristen Stewart doesn't emote, take a look at Rochelle Lefebvre. So the performances in this movie range from excellent to mediocre. And yes, a more consistent pool of talent would have made this movie better. However, YA adaptations do tend to have discrepancies with the talent. Like, look at the differences between Shailene Woodley and Ansel Elgort's performances in Divergent. Like, I'm sorry, Ansel Elgort is not a good actor. Like, his only good performance was in Baby Driver, and even Jamie Foxx outshone him in that. Like, argue in the comments about a sexual predator. Part 4. Script. So, script is not great. That's an exaggeration, but it is the weakest aspect of the film. But there are certain scenes that really show good screenwriting, and I want to talk about them. First, let's talk about the lab scene. I know a lot of people like crap on this scene for being overly long, but I do think it's some of the best dialogue in this entire movie. But basically, Edward has just gone back after like leaving for 2 weeks because he couldn't stand Bella's smell, and they finally start talking. And in the book, it goes from them talking about the onion root for a while, and then they talk more personal stuff, like why Bella moved to Forks. In the movie, these two conversations are interweaved. I know the word is interwoven, but I don't want to hear about it. which makes the conversation instantly more engaging because you don't have to get through the dry science stuff to get to the more interesting character talk. The scene also adds an element that is not in the book that elevates it quite a bit. In the movie, Bella checks her cell, gives her answer, and Edward asks to double check. This kind of annoys Bella, and later Edward checks the cell and Bella asks to double check it in kind of a retaliation. Just a bit later, Edward checks another cell, identifies what stage of mitosis it's in, and Bella says,
I believe you.
this is a simple line, but in the context of this scene, it does a lot. So I'm going to go back to Bella's character for a bit. One thing that is established early on about her character is that she is responsible. Between her scatterbrained mother and her clueless father, she has had to take on the role of caretaker whether she likes it or not. The thing is, she doesn't necessarily mind this role, but the thing is that Edward, she finds out that he is somebody who can take care of her. She does not have to take care of him. And this, not exactly a realization, but more of like an intrigue that Bella has towards Edward, is kind of for this reason, and it's established in this scene where she says, I believe you. She trusts Edward for some reason. I don't even think she knows why. This doesn't necessarily make the decisions from this point on rational, but it makes them more understandable. And that is why I think this scene is really good, because it shows that Bella trusts Edward for some reason. Another scene I want to talk about is the scene where Bella tells her dad she is leaving. So the setup of the scene is that Cam Gigande and his ponytail are now hunting Bella because she smells so good. And this scene, it has a really sharp and emotional script. It is so good, and Kristen Stewart and Billy Burke are acting their asses off. And it just makes this probably the most emotional scene in the movie. She comes home and starts packing her things because she says that she and Edward broke up, but it's a big fat lie because she has to leave in order to protect her dad. I hope nobody heard my toe pop. He is confused, he is frustrated, he is sad, he is concerned. Billy Burke portrays all this so well. And then Kristen Stewart is, you can tell she really doesn't want to say these things, but she has to, and it's a really hard scene to watch. And the lines, like her saying that they have nothing to relate to each other with, that he is stagnant, he is set in his ways, and Bella doesn't fit into that. That is hard stuff to hear. And then to finish with saying that she's going to be stuck here like mom, which is what Bella's mom said to him when she left. This is all emotional stuff that is backed up by other elements in the screenplay that happened earlier. This is good screenwriting. This is really good screenwriting. It's a really good scene. And I wish people would think about that there is good screenwriting here. Now that we're done gushing, I do want to criticize the script for a couple things. And one is that it's really expository. There are two scenes that are basically just someone explaining things to Bella. The first scene is when the Cullens are introduced and Jessica is explaining everything to Bella. This scene is necessary. The Cullens need to be introduced and their vibe needs to be established. And Anna Kendrick is just explaining their personalities and relationships and a couple other things to Bella. And she has enough charisma, she has enough talent to make it not dull. It does come off as overly long because these things are pretty much apparent from the visuals. You can tell that Rosalie is dating Emmett and that Jasper is dating Alice from just context that doesn't need to be explained out loud. And then you can tell their personalities from that scene and from later scenes, like when Bella goes over to their house for dinner. The other scene is when Edward and Bella are sitting by some body of water. I don't know whether it's a lake or a river because I'm stupid. but it's basically about like 5 minutes of Edward explaining vampire things to Bella. And again, this scene is necessary because it establishes the concept of vegetarianism in vampires, and that is important later. But the scene is simply Bella asks question and Edward answers question. I do think it's probably the weakest scene in the entire movie. So the script is its weakest aspect. So the script is its weakest aspect, particularly the exposition-heavy scenes, but certain scenes show very good screenwriting that people ignore because, I don't know, the spider monkey line gets more attention. Speaking of which, Part 5, Tone and Comedy. So I feel like when people bring up what they don't like about Twilight, it relates back to the tone, whether or not they realize it. They bring up the fact that it has unintentionally funny lines or cringy moments. Here's my question. Was the dialogue funny on accident? Were the ridiculous moments unintentional? I don't personally believe they were. The thing is, Twilight's tone is fairly obvious. It's meant to feel cold and dreary, but also romantic and comforting at the same time. I really think that people misinterpret the tone of Twilight. It is not taking itself nearly as seriously as people think it is. And I think Charlie is a testament to that, because why would a book like this insert the character of Charlie Swan, who is constantly calling out how crazy everything is, if it wasn't trying to be funny? The scene where Bella walks into the classroom and Edward looks like he's gonna throw up because of her smell is so funny to me every time I watch it. Like, to me, this is a clever subversion of the love at first sight trope. If you know the story, you know why he's reacting like this. But it's genuinely funny and surprising to just see him gag because of her smell. Robert Pattinson improvised the "you better hold on tight, spider monkey" line, and they left it in. They could have easily edited it out or written another line for him to say, but they left it in. Why? Because this movie is gooey and sappy and romantic and dramatic, but it also has these comedic moments to break that gooey feeling so that later on the other gooey feelings feel even gooier. Does that make sense? Does it? I don't know. Cat. Emmett standing up in the Jeep. Rosalie breaking the salad bowl. These are moments that play in my head all the time, and they make me laugh every time I watch Twilight. Yes, Twilight wants to be a dramatic, romantic movie, but that doesn't mean that the comedy in it is bad. The comedic moments add a necessary levity. So now it's time for what I think is Twilight's best aspect. Part 6, Soundtrack. Soundtrack slaps. Decode should be on Spotify. Not really much more to say. But Twilight does have another best aspect. Part 7, Cinematography. Twilight does not get nearly enough credit for its cinematography. This movie is chock full of dynamic and interesting shots, cool angles, visuals, etc. For example, the title sequence, the sweeping crane shot over the mountain, is instantly memorable as Twilight. The setting, the soundtrack, even the way the crane moves, it's so Twilight. And this is true for a lot of parts of the movie. There are shots that feel like Twilight, and that's kind of amazing. In a lot of popular movies, the cinematography can be very good, but I don't see a lot of popular movies where the cinematography is one of the strongest aspects. I love movies like Catching Fire or the Harry Potter movies. We don't talk about Chamber of Secrets. But cinematography is not what I remember from those movies. In Twilight, I remember the cinematography because the cinematography is great. How many times have I said cinematography, cinematography? Some people will argue that cinematography should be more invisible. It should service the story but not bring too much attention to itself, and that is a valid opinion. Certain things like that for certain movies should be more invisible. But to me, whenever I see a cool shot, I'm really impressed. Well, it depends on how it's used, but we're not going to get into that because I'm not a cinematographer. With movies, there is always the option of shooting it in a more straightforward manner. Shot reverse shot, 180 rule, over the shoulder shots, all that jazz. And that is a valid way to make a movie. But Catherine Hardwicke and Elliot Davis took multiple opportunities to make the camera work, the cinematography, way more interesting than it could have been. When the villains are introduced, the camera's on the ground angled up. This is called a worm's eye view, and it is meant to make the subject look more intimidating. You see, now I'm intimidating. Now I can take revenge on all my bullies in high school who made fun of me for being gay. Actually, no, they bullied me for being a theater kid. The theater kids bullied me for being gay. It was weird. Throughout the movie, slow-mo shots are used to punctuate and emphasize more dramatic moments. When Bella is almost hit by the van is one that stands out. It's relatively subtle, but there's a short slow-mo there right before Bella's about to get hit. And here's the thing. If you have ever been in a life-threatening situation, that's probably how it feels. I should know, I've had enough sketchy hookups to know how it feels. But the slow motion makes the scene just a bit more intense without drawing too much attention to itself. Another technique used a lot is zooms. Okay, so the zooms probably could have been used a little bit more sparingly, but they're still cool, so I like them. This scene, when Edward shows his strength to Bella, this quick zoom is really actually very effective at showing Bella's resolve. In the scene where Bella tells Edward that she knows he's a vampire, the camera is constantly moving. It is spinning around her, or in the distance, moving diagonally. It's really cool. It's a little bit obvious, but it's so cool to me. All of these cool camera techniques that Catherine Hardwicke and Elliot Davis use come together in one very important scene. It's a baseball scene. Part 7b, the baseball scene. Of course I have to devote an entire section to this scene. I have not met one person who doesn't agree that this is a banger of a scene. I think we underestimate just how silly and goofy that this scene could have been. Vampires playing baseball sounds straight out of a bad horror parody from the 80s. Some of the actors are on wires, which is kind of a hit or miss technique, but I guess Catherine Hardwicke never misses.
Huh?
First of all, the banger Muse song that comes on as the scene starts. It is moody and edgy, but also upbeat and fun, and it perfectly encapsulates the tone of the scene. There are several zoom, focus shots, and slow-mo shots that punctuate the scene and time it to the music better. These short slow-mo sections when Alice is pitching and she does that kick, which is iconic. It's almost timed to the music, and it's a really good way to start the scene with a bang. When the camera zooms in and does a slow-mo on Rosalie hitting the baseball, this is a good and effective way of showing Bella and the audience their true power, because it is very impactful. And this is backed up by the tracking shot of the baseball going through the woods, which is just a really cool shot. And there's a quick shot to Jasper, who is twirling a baseball bat, which, fun fact, Jackson Rathbone could actually do that even before filming began, and Catherine Hardwicke thought it would be cool to put in the movie, so it's in the movie. Am I talking fast? I feel like I'm talking fast. I haven't taken a drink in a while. I should do that. The zoom out to show Carlisle about to bat isn't that novel. It's not that unique, but it does something to me. This whole video is just me thirsting over Peter Facinelli. Let's move on. This isn't cinematography related, but I like in this scene where it looks like Emmett is jumping on a trampoline, and then when Edward and Emmett crash just as the thunder claps, just chef's kiss cinematic poetry. And then after they're done, and like they fall to the ground and they're like joking with each other, and the camera is like swaying in a more freeform way as opposed to the more composed shots of the other parts of the scene, and I think that's a really, really good break. My monkey man. And then the focus on Alice as she has a vision of the villains coming is just a perfect way to end the scene. Scene should have been a lot longer, but what you gonna do? If not directed with the skill of Catherine Hardwicke and Elliot Davis, this scene could have been the most mocked aspect of the movie. It's kind of interesting though, because this scene is less directed like a movie and it's more directed like a music video. There are excessive effects, things are timed to the music, and it's more high energy than the rest of the movie. And despite this, or maybe very much because of this, it ends up being the most iconic movie that even film majors watch in the darkness of their dorm room, eating... What do film majors eat? Funyuns? I don't know. Part 8. Entertainment. So, I have been discussing the artistic merit that I think Twilight has, the more technical aspects that I think make Twilight better than it's perceived to be by the public. Here's the thing, is that you can disagree with all the points I made here. That is your right. Because even if a movie is doing everything it can, the director is at the top of their game, the cast is perfect, the script is tight, the characterizations are perfect, the cinematography is amazing, that is not going to win everyone. Because art is subjective. Whether or not you like a piece of art is subjective, and it relies on emotions. Every movie is someone's favorite. Twilight is not perfect. It has tonal issues, the script is not the best, and the performances are uneven. But Twilight is my go-to fun movie. If I want to turn my brain off for a while, if I don't want to think too hard about what I'm watching, I watch Twilight or Shark Boy and Lava Girl, but we'll discuss that in a different video. Because it's fun. To me, Twilight is just so fun and entertaining, and I don't have to think about it too hard. I will watch heady intellectual movies. I will watch a Christopher Nolan movie and think about all the intricacies of the characters and the plot, and it's... Though now that he's releasing movies during pandemics, I don't know. I've watched Twilight so many times to make this video, and it hasn't gotten old. I find new things to like about it every time, and the old things I liked about it get better or they get worse. It doesn't matter because I'm always having fun watching it. I like Twilight. Nothing's gonna change that. I acknowledge its flaws. It has many. But to me, the entertainment I reap from it is more important than its flaws. Twilight, it is a goofy movie that I really like to watch a lot. I think if you watch with an open mind, you might find things you like about it, like I found things I liked about it after watching it with an open mind. As if this video weren't long enough already, here's an overlong explanation of why I'm making this channel. One, money. I want money. But two is that there's this idea that cringe culture is dead, and I don't agree. I think it is dying, but you know what, not fast enough for my taste, not nearly fast enough. So I want to be the hammer that breaks cringe culture forever. I'm very much overestimating what kind of reach I'm gonna get with this channel. I just snorted. The algorithm favors think bad content. I know this. Some of this I really like. I love film critique videos. They're some of my favorites. What I don't like are over an hour long pieces about how you think that the newest blockbuster is the worst thing to happen to humanity because, I don't know, some of the plot points were weird. I just want this channel to be a more positive place. Don't get me wrong, I have critique videos I'm planning, but that's not what I want my main thing to be. I just want to talk about things I like, because that is so much more fun to me than talking about things I dislike. And I want to have fun. if I'm gonna make this a job, hopefully, I want to have fun. Because girls just want to have fun. I'm gonna edit that out. I also really want to get into long form content because that's some of my favorite content, and it's totally not because the algorithm favors long form content. Why would you even say that? But I don't know if you can hear it, but a car alarm is going off, but we're gonna continue anyway. D'Angelo Wallace, ContraPoints, Jenny Nicholson, Lindsay Ellis, they're some of my favorite creators on YouTube. I look up to them so much. And you know, I figure it's time we gotta get the gays in on the video essay. What? Almost every single video essayist is queer? Shit. My brand. There's no one there. But anyway, I hope that people like this. And if you do, like, subscribe, wear a mask, and go watch Twilight. Bye.